Hi everyone, we're going to find polar coordinates for each point, and we're going to give r to the nearest tenth and theta to the nearest tenth of a radian. So make sure your calculator is in radians, and remember we're going to be using that r equals plus or minus square root of x squared plus y squared. And also, since we're using the calculator, we have tan of theta equals y over x, and when you do the inverse of tan, we're restricted in the domain. So for our angle, it's restricted from negative pi over 2 to pi over 2. So we might have to change our angle if we're in quadrant 2 or 3. So for example, this is quadrant 4, so this one's fine, and this one's quadrant 2. So we're going to have to change this. So we'll go over that. So the first one's in quadrant 1, so it's pretty straightforward. You use a calculator, and we're just going to use your Pythagorean theorem. 5 squared plus 2 squared, you get to use the calculator. So that's plus or minus 5.5. And 5.4. We're going to use the positive, because we're in quadrant 1. So our angle is tan of theta equals 2/5. You can just put that in your calculator, and you get theta equals 0.4. So since we're in quadrant 1, we're just going to use our 5.4, comma, as 0.4. Now the second one, we're in quadrant 4. So this one we don't have to change either, because remember our restrictions are from negative pi over 2 to pi over 2. So this one's fine. So we have r equals plus or minus 8 squared plus negative 6 squared, which gives you plus or minus 10. All right, and then tan of theta equals negative 6 divided by 8. So our angle is negative 0.6. So since we're in quadrant 4 here, this is in quadrant 4. Quadrant 4 here, our answer is just going to be whatever's given, 10, comma, negative 0.6. All right, and then the last two. So for the negative 1, negative 4, we're in quadrant 3. So that's where we're going to have to adjust our angle. This is quadrant 3. So we have r equals plus or minus square root of negative 1 squared plus negative 4 squared, which is approximately plus or minus 4.1. We have tan of theta equals negative 4 divided by negative 1. And that equals 1.3. Since we're in quadrant 3, we're going to take our positive 4.1, but then take this one and get it back into the quadrant by subtracting. I don't know why I always do that. It from pi. So pi minus 1.3. So we can get it back into our restricted domain. So when you do that, your final answer is going to be 4.1, comma, negative 1.8. And for the last one, this one is in quadrant 2. Again, that's a problem, because this goes from quadrant 1 to quadrant 4 to quadrant 1. So we have r equals plus or minus, just like this one, negative 8 squared plus 6 squared, which equals plus or minus 10. And then we have tan of our angle is 5 divided by negative 8. So your angle is negative 0.6. So we know that this is in quadrant 2. So we're going to use positive 10, and then we're going to get it to quadrant 4. So we're going to take pi minus 0.6. And that gives you 10, comma 2.5. And that's it. Thank you. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.